So how do I teach? Well, it kind of works like this. We're on a video connection, my student and I, so we can see and talk to one another in real time. And I also have an online whiteboard where we can write notes and work on the same problems and write on the whiteboard next to one another as we work out math problems or science problems. So that's kind of the physical how I do it. But I think people are really asking, how do you teach philosophically? And the answer to that is, well, I'm a fourth generation teacher. It's bred into my bones and my DNA. And I teach by telling stories mostly. Since you have teenagers and live with teenagers, you know you can't tell them anything. So the behaviors that they've got, the way that they're thinking about the test, the way they're approaching the test, the way they're doing their timing, the way they're reading the questions, the way they're solving those questions, those aren't getting them the scores that they want. So they need to change their behavior. They need to do things different. And of course, asking them to do so doesn't work, and you're trying harder doesn't work. They actually need to do something physically different. So I have all sorts of tricks up my sleeve, including draw a picture, write a chart, check the fridge for elephants. There's all sorts of techniques that I use in order to get them to do different behavior. I tell stories. Let me give you an example. On the old SAT, there was a question that said, for any number n, what's the order of square root n, and n squared? And my students would look at that and they'd all kind of roll their eyes and say, well, duh, the square root of a number is smaller than the number, and the square of a number is larger than the number. So that's what they would choose, and they would move on. But first of all, is that really an SAT question? That seems pretty easy. The piece that they missed in the question is it said for any n when n is between 0 and 1. So what the number is a fraction, that order then is different because fractions work differently when squared and square rooted than regular numbers. But they wouldn't read it. And so when I would ask kids, what can you do differently? They'd say, oh, well, try harder, or I'll read the question next time. But that never actually happens. I mean, they may try harder, but that doesn't change their behavior. So I needed them to change their behavior. So in order to do so, I told them this story. When my little girl was in kindergarten, I would have to make her lunch every day and send her to school. And one day at breakfast, I said, baby, what would you like for lunch today? And she said, Mama, can I have anything I want? And I said, of course, yes, absolutely. I'll make you anything you want for lunch today. What would you like? And she leaned forward and she said, Mama, I want an elephant in my lunch today. And I laughed and I said, okay, well, first of all, we don't eat elephants. But second of all, when I said you could have anything, I didn't mean anything under the sun. I meant anything in my refrigerator. So when the SAT or the ACT says any number n, what you need to do is you need to go check the refrigerator, because it probably isn't any number under the sun. You need to go back to the problem and say, wait, what are the restrictions here? Oh, look, in this problem, it was if n was between 0 and 1. So now when I told them that story, now my kids come back and we talk about checking the refrigerator all the time, and they'll come back on the after they take the real SAT or ACT, and they say, I heard your voice in my head, check the refrigerator. And so they end up changing their behavior. Instead of reading the question or reading it more slowly, whenever they come across a variable n or x, they immediately go back to the question and read looking for those restrictions. As a result, they get more of those questions correct and their scores go up. So to summarize, how I teach is I need to get them to do something different. How they're taking the test, how they're approaching the problem, how they're solving out for answers isn't getting them the scores that they want. So they need to change their behavior. In order to change their behavior, just telling them to do so doesn't work. I need to tell a story or somehow get them to do a different behavior. So telling stories is one of my most favorite tricks in my arsenal.